Okay, so get up. All right, brother. I'm going to go in 3. I want you guys to start. I'm going to do the answer, okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3. You know it. What? You tell the story. What? You tell the whole damn world this is their territory. You know it. What? You tell the story. What? You tell the whole damn world this is their territory. You know it. What? You tell the story. What? You tell the whole damn world this is their territory.
Good morning, Golden Bear fans. Welcome to another episode of Tell the Whole Damn World. I'm your host, Reza Serafinejad, and it's an especially great day to be a bear. This is the first week of 2025, and I hope all of you out there had a wonderful New Year's. I'm excited because in this week's episode, we're spending time with Ken Montgomery, the legendary mic man who rallied Cal fans like no other and became synonymous with the football team's resurgence as a national power in the early 1990s. We'll hear some great stories about his time at Cal and learn more about his extremely charitable philanthropy. But first, we need to cover a few big news items in the world of Cal sports. I'm sure all of you have heard this by now, but the biggest news is that 5-star high school quarterback sensation, Jaron Yahweh Sagapolo Tellin, I think I got that right, will be coming to Cal. He decided to transfer out of Oregon and figures to be a strong contender to be our newest starting quarterback. That's just sensational news for our football program and gives our team and fans a much-needed boost of optimism as we start the new year. In basketball news, the Cal women, ranked number 20 in the country, improved to 14-2 after beating SMU 81-66 in Dallas. They're 2-1 in the ACC and off to their best start since the 2012-2013 season. The Cal men lost to Clemson 80-68 to fall to 7-7 on the season, despite 30 points from Andrei Stojakovic. The number 4 women's gymnastics team took home a pair of wins on Saturday at the season-opening American Gold Collegiate Classic, hosting a 196.275 to beat both number 19 Oregon State and number 10 UCLA. They compete again this Saturday when they take on number 1 Oklahoma, number 2 LSU, and number 5 Utah at the Sprouts Farmers Market Collegiate Classic in Oklahoma City. Be sure to watch the star-studded nationally televised event on ABC at 1 p.m. Pacific this Saturday. And a couple of quick congratulatory notes regarding 2 former Cal football players. Deshaun Jackson has been named the head football coach at Delaware State University. And with the Detroit Lions' victory last night against the Minnesota Vikings, Jared Goff has now led the Lions to a 15-2 regular season record. They've clinched the number 1 seed in the NFC heading into the playoffs for the first time in the team's history. You can almost hear the chants of Jared Goff coming from Detroit all the way out here. And lastly, Ahmad and I will have our first Tell the Whole Damn World get-together on Wednesday, January 15th at Raleigh's at 4 p.m. Join us to watch the Cal men's basketball team take on the North Carolina Tar Heels in Chapel Hill. We would love to see you there. But right now, we're going to jump right into our interview. Joining me in a moment will be my co-host, Cal legend Ahmad Anderson, and together we will welcome Ken Montgomery to the program as our featured guest. I realize I can be given to some hyperbole, but Ken Montgomery will forever be known as the best mic man who has ever rallied the crowd at Cal football and basketball games. The legend goes that he burst onto the scene at Memorial Stadium when Cal played defending national champion Miami in 1990. And although we lost that game, he became symbolic of a new era in Cal sports history that saw the men's basketball team reach the NCAA tournament for the first time in 30 years, and the football team become a national power with back-to-back bowl wins and a number 7 national ranking to cap off the 1991 season. It was a glorious time to be a Cal fan, and the memories we share of that time were made that much richer because of Ken. His infectious enthusiasm and sheer force of will inspired an entire generation of Cal fans to care more deeply about the university and its sports teams, including yours truly. We're looking forward to learning more about Ken and his generous philanthropy that has made a direct impact on many of the sports programs Cal sponsors. Welcome to Tell the Whole Damn World,
Thanks,
Ken.
Reza. I'm going to have you do all of my PR and introductions for anything I do this point going forward. So thank you for that. It was very kind.
Yeah, between Ahmad and me, we're pretty good hype men. I'll tell you that. You could count on that anytime. We'll be happy to do that. So just jump right into it. You grew up in the East Bay, and so
Yeah. So, I grew up 6 BART stations away from campus. And, growing up in San Leandro, and I always tell people I grew up in 880 San Leandro, not 580 San Leandro. So I didn't grow up in the hills. I grew up down in the flatlands of San Leandro. Like a lot of people of childhood, and Cal was a real escape for me. And it was something I always dreamed about, going to Cal. And my grandfather was a longtime fan. He had never gone to Cal, but was friends with Jackie Jensen way back in the day and had done some work with Jackie Jensen, was a big fan of his when he was at Cal. Cal was just in my blood from the get-go. I can remember my best friend, J.R. Delaney, and I, when we were in high school, his older sister had got into Cal. And we would go over and tag along with her. We'd walk around campus, and we would just, like when we were in high school, go in on big lecture classes and just think, wow, this is amazing. This is just so cool. And, we'd go to the football games, and, after the games, we'd walk down and we'd pass by. The thing I totally remember would be passing by the Fiji House, on Piedmont Circle, right? And I mean, man, if that just didn't exemplify and glorify what college was all about to a high school kid, and walking down and, getting a slice at Blondie's, and it was just amazing. And there was something, all the games back then all started at basically 12:30 or 1 o'clock, right? We didn't have night games back then. And we'd end the day getting back on BART probably, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night because we'd hung out in Berkeley. And it really was just this wonderful, escape. And so, yeah, I had always from the get-go had wanted to go to Cal.
that's great. I mean, when I think about it, my experience coming to Cal, I mean, I started taking classes back like in junior high, like summer session, going to campus, and was always just amazed at how beautiful the campus was and all of that. And I can totally see what you mean. I mean, yeah, being like an escape.
And I think of my class, probably 350, 400 students in my class, maybe more. I don't think 30 went, and I think that's a stretch. I don't think 30 went to a 4-year university, right out of school. And nothing wrong with that, by the way, right? Maybe you're going to go to a trade school, which is awesome. You're going to go do a JC. So, interestingly, I just had my 40th high school reunion, and it was wonderful seeing all these, great folks, and just seeing the different, the wonderfully different lives that people have lived through different paths, right?
Now that's spot on, Ken, and thank you, man, for being on today. I'm from the city of Richmond, so I get it. Just a few BART trains away. I went to St. Mary's High School, but I felt like when I got to St. Mary's, there were so many of my friends that was going to go to work. San Leandro, Richmond, those were and have been the industrial backbone of the East Bay. That's where the large companies were. That's where the transportation companies were. And many of our friends have gone on to be the CEOs and the VPs of what is the lifeline and the bloodline of working people that make this Bay Area, East Bay, very strong.
When I talk with people, and let's say somebody goes to Fresno State, let's say right out of high school, they started working for PG&E or something, there's a tendency for them to say, oh, I just went to Fresno State, or, and instead of going, whatever. And I say, never say that. Never say you just did something and somehow diminish it. You did something. And whatever you're doing, if you put your heart into it and you do it with integrity, it's awesome. We all just happen to have this great experience of going to the world's greatest university, not the world's greatest public university, the world's greatest university. And we've had this experience in these ties, the fact that the three of us are talking, and the fact that we have so many friends in common, and that we could go all over the world, be wearing some Cal paraphernalia, and you're going to get a Go Bears, And a couple of years ago, before COVID, I was on a plane during the big game, and I was heading to India, and I'm following it in line on the plane, and we won, and I got up and I'm excited. So I'm doing a few laps around the plane, and literally I got like 3 or 4 Go Bears, on the plane going to India, because everybody had been following the big game. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. It all connects us. How you kind of became you at Cal before you really kind of leapt into everyone's consciousness as the Mike Man. You were leading cheers at men's basketball games, if I'm not mistaken.
His first name was Dave, and for the life of me, I can't remember his last name. He would wear a football jersey that said Mike Man on the back of the jersey, and I think it was 00 or something. And Dave would lead cheers. He was terrific. I remember like just being like, this guy's cool, right? What he would do, and he would lead cheers at both venues, and he would let me go and do a couple cheers, as I always wanted to at basketball games in old Harmon. And then when he wasn't there, maybe during break, I would just do it. And I wasn't at Cal at the time. And there's a story there, we've talked about, but I wasn't at Cal at the time, but you would think I was. And, I just remember I would get out there and run out to the center court, right, and give me a C cheer, and, or do a Go Bears cheer, in Old Harmon. And it was just awesome. And people would come up to me and say, you've got to do this at football games. And I'd go, no way, because we had a pretty bad stretch of football, right? And I had seen person after person get rolled up, out of that student section. And I thought, no, there's not a chance. That's a rough crowd. That's a tough room to Memorial Stadium. See people just try and fail. And matter of fact, one of my favorites, I want to say it was 1987. We were playing OSU, and OSU was historically bad at football. Nationally historically bad, along with Northwestern and Duke. But somehow they had our number. It's amazing. If you go back and look at the record, there's like a 30-year stretch where maybe they won in those 30 years. They had winless seasons. Maybe they won 30 games. Like 8 of the wins were against us, right? And we weren't always terrible. So we had an open mic. And I'm almost positive it was 1987. And, there were people going down and, they're failing and just getting rolled up. And there was a guy he was an Oregon State fan. He came over and he said, on 3, and we didn't know he was an Oregon State fan. He comes over and he says, on 3, you can't lick our beavers. And I thought, well, that's a weird cheer for us to be doing. I wonder why we're doing that cheer. But he goes, 1, 2, 3, and we all said it. And he goes, go OSU. And, we were so beaten down as a fan base. Can you imagine, you're in the opposing stadium, they've got an open mic, and you get those students to do your cheer? So anyways, we had this open mic. And then I think in 88, they went to a mic couple. And I think all of these people's hearts are in the right places, but they just didn't have it. So 88, we had the mic couple, didn't really work. Then in 90, there were 4 people that were the mic crew. I don't know what you call them. And they were wearing uniforms. They had sweaters on and white shorts and stuff. And again, their hearts were absolutely in the right place. But they just did not have what it takes. And we're playing Miami. They're the national champion. Good crowd in Memorial, not a sellout, but a good crowd in Memorial. And we're playing them close. And just the crowd's not really into it. So the third quarter, one of the folks, this guy named Mel, who was one of the mic men, and Mel's a sweetheart, a really nice guy. And he just kind of lost his place. And we've got the ball, and he starts a defense cheer, right? Defense, Bears defense. And I put my head in my hands, sitting up like in row 30, and I go, I can't go through another year like this. And I'm with a couple friends, and they looked at me, and I looked at them, and they go, do it. So, I just walked down, and I said, hey, can you give me the mic? For some reason, they gave me the mic. I wanted to give me the mic, but, they gave me the mic. And I remember this clear as day, because it was really it was a true inflection point in my life, to be honest with you, right? I mean, it's very rare that you can look back at a very specific moment that totally informs your life going forward, and this did. And I remember looking up the students, and the student section was packed, and I think we were down by like 10. And I said to them, I go, hey, everybody, we're playing the national champs, we're only down by 10, and they're listening to me. And I go, we're supposed to be having fun. Did you come here to have a good time? And everyone, yeah. And Reza, I think you were at the game. And I go, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to do an old one. It's going to be easy. On 3, everyone yells, "Go Bears." So I go 1, 2, 3, and they did it. And what a freaking, oh my God, I just got 7,000 of my peers to do what I told them to do. And it was cool, right? And I go, we're going to do it again. And it's hard for people to believe this, but back then we didn't stand up at the games. It just wasn't something that we did. And so I go, you know what? You can't do a cheer sitting down. You got to stand up. And everybody stood up. And it was like, what? This is incredible. And that's how it started. And sometimes life gives you these phenomenal serendipitous moments that, that's when you think that there's a larger force at work, because Miami was they're up by 10 and they're going for a field goal in the north end zone. And I just got the students to yell very sternly, block that kick. And the alumni joined in. And, we're yelling, block that kick. And Cal blocks the kick and, runs it back for like 40 or 50 yards.
Gilmore to hold. And it's blocked. Cornell Colliers picking it up. Gilmore caught him.
And from that moment on, those students knew, and I, by the way, I think it's coincidental. I don't think we actually caused that, but maybe there's a fraction, 3 or 4% that got in that kicker's head when he was doing that, or in the snapper, or whatever. But the students, all of a sudden, they thought, we're part of this thing, right? We can impact what's going on the field. We ended up losing. Miami pulled away. They were national champs. And, after the game, literally hundreds of people came up to me and they were saying, you should keep doing this. That was amazing. And I think they were experiencing the same thing I was experiencing after the Miami game. There was, it was like, wow. And I remember, like going by a bunch of fraternities, I had friends in all these houses and people just shaking my hand and giving me beers. And then walking into Raleigh's, where I was the doorman, and the place breaking into applause when I walked in. Just imagine, being a kid in college and having that happen. Like, how can you not be on cloud 9? And then, of course, Reza and I, you and I both belonged to this wonderful student group called Californians. I think we had meetings on Monday or Tuesday nights. And, Eric, who was the president, I got like our little award. And a huge percent of your audience won't know what this is, but my answering machine was filled with messages. And 2 of the messages were from Dave Maggart, who was the AD. One was from Bruce Snyder, wonderful, wonderful man who was our coach. And then there was one from Diane Milano, who was assistant in charge of Cal Spirit. And they all wanted to get hold of me and wanted to know who I was, how I did it, and wanted me to continue doing it. So I went in and met with Coach Snyder. He was a lovely person, right? And he got it. Coach Snyder got the power of enthusiasm in students. And then I remember going in and meeting with Diane, and I remember walking in the office. This used to be an RSF, and I walked in and she goes, I want to shake your hand. And so we talked about me doing it permanently, and I was still a little unsure about that because I did not want to be a part of the official, because I think there was something organic about what I was doing, right? That worked a lot better. So I said, okay, I'll do it, but I'm not wearing a uniform, right? I'm going to show up in my shorts and t-shirts, right? Because I am a student. And I think this works best when it's a student to a student type of thing. And just one more thing, Jack Clark, was down on the field with Maggart, and Jack Clark turned to Dave Maggart and said, you got to get that kid involved. Right, that whatnot. And so that was pretty cool. So I'm always in debt to Jack Clark for that.
Well, I'll tell you, you talk about Miami, and I know that feeling as a football player who would be in the stands. And during my times, we had some highs and lows, but hearing the other team during the 80s, during 80 and 81, when we had our lowest time when I played, and hearing all the chants of all the other teams and the cheers and so forth, and saying to myself, one, I wish we were winning so our team, not only our team, but our fan base would have that same kind of excitement that you're talking about. Then life flips. I create the Bear Territory cheer, and bang. And when you talk about old school football, I think through the 70s to the mid 80s, folks were standing up. Then we had that sort of low period where they were sitting in the stands, boola, boola, go Bears, but they weren't going crazy. But you needed something for them to go crazy about. And I felt that connection from not only the fan base, but the band and how they vibe together to make that happen. And that is, that to me, for us during that period of time, that's what Bear Territory was and is still today all about. So when they came here to Miami, when Miami game was here, and they reached out and said, we want you to do game day and we want you to open it up, I'll tell you, and you call me this, if I heard you say Godfather, that means they're talking about me. And Ken is the one who named me the Godfather of Bear Territory in 2012. He told the whole damn world, the Godfather
Absolutely.
of Bear Territory to Ahmad Anderson at Edwards when we did it there. And so when I was thinking about that, I went to YouTube and I'm looking at all the mic men and all the things. And I said, man, I cannot blow this.
Yeah,
I don't want to be the grandfather. I just want to still remain the Godfather. So you have hit it, and you were a turning point. That Dave guy that you referred to, that's sort of that mythical legend guy. I don't know where that guy came from. That guy was a guy sort of like the guy who the A's games, right? That was do banging on other we know the origin of that. But Dave, he should have just appeared and would just take over. And that was the spirit of what it meant to be a Cal too, right? That free speech.
Hey, Ahmad, let me tell you, my favorite cheer that he did was, I don't remember the game, but this is so gloriously Cal because it's so random, right? I mean, and it's so much fun. It was at halftime, and he was out and he had the stadium-wide mic back then, which we didn't do a lot. And he was out at midfield, and he got the crowd to do the sound of a car shifting gears in transmission. And he told everyone what we're going to do. I'm going to go into first gear, second gear, third gear, and it was and the whole crowd. And it was just so, what in the hell? This is so awesome.
That's all about keeping people in the mix there. But that is it. It's like being that person and having experienced that myself now, leading the cheer for the Bear Territory or Go Bears or incorporating Go Bears. You could be a great comedian with some great lines, but if you don't have the presence to keep the
100%.
audience.
And winning absolutely cures a lot of things. And I think one of the problems we've had the last 10 or so years at our football games is, one, as fans, you can't control whether we win or not, right? You can't. I mean, you can help certain situations get loud, you can make it hard and everything. But the key to keeping people in that stadium is engaging them and making them feel they are a part of the game. And that's what we've lost the last 10 years. And you're the godfather of really one of the iconic cheers of sports. You created a cheer, and you think about this, that not only did you open game day with that, right? That awesome, cheer and just set the mood. You had Pat McAfee doing it and doing it again, right? So you need to take time to like appreciate that, right? You did something that is pretty cool to have done at a place like Berkeley that is filled with notables, and you did something that was really notable.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that, Ken. I do. There was a period like from the UCLA game in '82 to the end of that season, and it went through the mid '80s, and then it sort of died. There was no real fanfare about Bear Territory. I know that, and this sort of segued into what Rez is going to talk about your former roommate as well. But building those kind of relationships have helped carry that on. So I came back to the university in 1980, 84, and I became the academic advisor for student athletes. A lot of folks that was graduation in spring '83. A lot of folks I played football were there for the remaining years I was there. I finished up working there in '96. So I had that relationship with a lot of the players, and they knew about Bear Territory. They started saying it a little bit more, and the next thing you knew, after our national highlights of bowl games, the 2 bowl games back to back, all of a sudden Bear Territory is alive and well in the locker room.
I got so many things. I've been just chomping at the bit to jump in here, and you guys love to talk, and I love to talk too. I can't let it go with everything that happened and how you burst onto the scene, because you talked about connection and engagement. And Ken, I mean, you got that right from the get-go. Like when you stood up there and addressed everybody there at the football game, it was like there was this immediate bond and connection. And you're a big guy, okay? And that's part of it, right? If I'm not mistaken, I think in my memory, there was some guy who jumped up at some point, like grabbed the mic and was like, yeah, and just talking crap. And you went down there and you just said, hey, you get out of here right now. And the guy would like, no, I'm not going to, or whatever. And you just like, you picked him up, you put him over your shoulder, and you like walked him out the stadium, right? It's like you're just way bigger. It's like, well, I'm not hurting you. I'm just lifting you and taking you out because you have no place here. And I remember it was like, oh, this is amazing. As a guy just like took control of the situation.
It was a different time. Yeah, you do.
So that was one of the legendary stories that I remember about you, and just made the student body, like everybody, you were that bridge between the athletes on the field who we, idolized and were just in awe of playing their butts off, and us as fans out there in the stands. And there are so many different things that come to mind, but we're talking about cheers, and I can't let this go. But, well, there's I think 2 things here. The USC cheer in 1991. Now, how did that evolve? How did you, because did you come up with it? And was this something with Mike, or your roommate, who to be Mike Pawlowski? And how did you become roommates?
Well, and this speaks largely to Mike, by the way. So if you remember, I was the doorman at Raleigh's for 3 years. And I was a softie, like for the most part. Because, when you're the doorman and you're in college and you go to classes with people, you don't want to be a dick and have to walk into class and people are going, oh, that's that asshole that wouldn't let us in. But it was like a slow night, and Pawlowski came in and he gives me his ID. And, this is back in the day. And again, younger people don't understand this. So back in the day, you could get a license or you could get a California ID card. And what people would do is, like in the fraternities or just in general, the juniors and seniors, they would let the younger people get an ID card using all of their information, right? Because, just times were different. So Mike walks in with this legitimate California ID card, his picture on it, but all the information was Troy Taylor. And it was hilarious. And I look at it, and I didn't know Mike. And, this was 1989. So Mike, wasn't even, he was a sophomore, wasn't even, I don't even know where he was on the depth chart at the time. And I go, you're not Troy Taylor. And Mike goes, yeah, but the ID says I am. I go, but I know Troy Taylor. I'm friends with Troy Taylor. You're not Troy Taylor. You know, I'm not going to let you in. So I didn't let him in. And we laughed at that story because, you know, we became great friends and we ended up, there was another guy, Andrew Sugarman, Shug, you know, Andy, right? You know, Shug and Mike needed a housemate and Shug and I had become friends and they said, yeah, come live with us. So it was Jared Willard, who was just an awesome guy. You know, one of the great linebackers in Cal history. He's in the Hall of Fame. It was Tim Manning, another great, you know, defensive player, you know. It was Shug. And then it was Bilowski. So we were all housemates. So we're playing. So this is 91 now. And we are playing, obviously, you know, we're having a great year, right? You know, and so anyway, so we're playing USC. We're ranked in the top 10. We know we're going to crush them. We know we're better than they are. So Mike's then girlfriend and I are at home, and it's like Tuesday or Wednesday night. And you guys remember this, and young people and don't know. You know, we used to have a bonfire rally before the SC or the UCLA game every year at home. You know, when that game was at home. So we're going to have the SC bonfire rally on Friday night, and we've got this little organ, and we're just kind of dun 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 dun. Right? We're just we're whatever. And all of a sudden, Mike's girlfriend said, "That's the only song you know." And then Mike chimed in with, "It's boring and it's slow." And then we're all going, "We really wish you'd go." And we go, "I think we got something. I think we got something there." And so we did it again. It was like, this is pretty cool. And I go, Mike, at the bonfire rally, I'm going to teach the students this. So we had the bonfire rally Friday night, big crowd at the bonfire rally, and I taught the students that song. And I wasn't sure it was going to work, you know, because it's a hard thing to do, right? And of course, SC played right into our hand, and we crushed them. And I remember they're doing it before the game. People are coming in. And again, it's hard for some people to remember this, but we used to, and this isn't like there were games before 1990 and 91 where the students didn't show up until the very game time. You know, there were times that student section wasn't always packed. But in 90, 91, 92 and whatnot, that section was packed every game, and it was packed early because you wanted to get good seats, right? So the SC band's playing like they do before the game. I'm telling the students what we're going to do. And it was just incredible. Like, you know, they did something, and all of a sudden they started playing it. And as soon as they stopped, we had I got the crowd go, "Here we go. That's the only song you know. It's boring and it's slow. We really wish you'd go." And then you do it again. So you always have to do it twice because the second time's always better.
The only song you know, it's boring and it's slow. We really wish you'd go. That's the only song you know, it's boring and it's slow. We really wish you'd go.
And it was loud. And I remember like just all the players laughing and looking back up at it. And we must have done it 20, 30 times because SC would just oblige us, you know, after every 1 yard gain as we're blowing them out. You know, it doesn't work if we're not blowing them out, right? So, we're blowing them out. And after every 1 yard gain, they'd strike that up. And, you know, it got picked up on this was a national broadcast game by ABC. You heard it over and over. And Ahmad, just like what you did with game day, I remember the thrill of picking up the New York Times, Sports Illustrated, the LA Times, and them all talking about the Cal crowd and talking about us with that mocking song. And my favorite was Jim Murray, the great columnist in the LA Times, saying, you're talking about how Cal was beat SC in every possible way. And he said, in the stands, the Cal student section beat the SC crowd because every time the band would play that dirge, and that's what he used the word dirge, the Cal fans would sing mockingly back, and he put the lyrics in. And dude, I mean, when you're a student, and this is pre-internet, 150 channels and stuff, and you're a student, and you got the New York Times talking about you, and Sports Illustrated talking about you, and the LA Times talking about you, not me, talking about the crowd, right? Pretty awesome. So, so Mike Pulowski was responsible for that. Mike and I got to know each other in a wonderful class. I really do want to bring this up. We had a class called, and Ahmad, I don't know if you took this class because I think he was teaching it. It was called Athletics in Ancient Greece, taught by one of the great professors at Cal, Professor Steve Miller. And and it was, it wasn't a MIC class, but it was a big, huge lecture class. I think we had it in Wheeler, 300 students, but it was a way to get people, into the classics, right? And use athletics as a whatnot. So Mike and I had that class along with, I think Todd Stussy was in the class. I think Steve Stafford was in the class. There were a bunch of water polo players that were my friends that were in the class. And Mike had to give a speech on what a hero is. And that was, that's one of the things in Greek mythology, what's a hero? Obviously, Achilles is a hero, and, there are other heroes. And so Mike gave a talk on a hero, and Professor Miller taught us that there are a couple of things that have to happen in order for a hero to be a hero. And one of the big ones is you have to die prematurely, right? That's, to be a classic hero. So Mike gave this great talk on Joe Roth, right? It was really, to see Mike up in front of the class, talking, it was really, it was terrific. So, we had been friends. So we have that little piece of history together. There, a very sweet thing that happened was we were playing Arizona 2014. And, I'm down in Tucson. And so, Mike knows I'm down there. He goes, "Hey, come have dinner with Joe Starkey and me." So we're having dinner. It's a lovely dinner. I post a picture online or something, and I'm talking about all the stories. And Mike says, "But Ken was telling most of the stories." And somebody replied, "That's because Ken knows Mike Pulowski and Joe Starkey," right? And that's the great thing is I get to, I've got to know all these people, right? The stories aren't about me. It's about them. I just get to tell the stories. Yeah, that's how I got to know Mike. Mike and I are still friends. We still talk to each other. If you haven't read his book, it's absolutely terrific. I recommend people pick that book up. And yeah, he's a terrific guy. Just a really awesome guy. Mike did a very sweet thing. When I went back to Cal to finish my degree, I got one quarter where I got to be the mic man. As we were playing Arizona, and it's a pretty lousy game, but it was fun. And on the radio, somebody had actually recorded it for me. Mike gave me a shout out on the radio saying, "Hey, you hear that crowd? That's my old housemate. That's Ken Montgomery, the old mic man, back down there doing it again. He's back in school." So I thought that was very sweet of him to do.
Well, I just want to jump on this because you actually have a good segue on this, talking about a hero who passed away prematurely. The person in particular who I'm thinking of, who I know was very close to you, was Mark Bingham. By 93, 9/11 attacks.
Mark and I weren't friends at Cal. We knew each other barely. I was out at a, so after I left Cal, I didn't graduate. I left Cal and left in good standing and was at a bar. My cable went out, wanted to watch the 49er game on a Sunday, and met up with Mark at that bar. We encountered each other at that bar, and we became just great friends. And we really became best friends. And you have like 5 best friends, right? You've got this group of pillar best friends. I think the amazing thing about Mark Bingham is that you could probably ask 100 people, and they would say Mark was my best friend, right? And that's how Mark was. Mark was responsible for getting me into my career that I'm in now. It's a very sweet story. He was working for a cell phone company, and he was applying to a PR agency, and I helped him with his resume. And Marty goes, "Ken, you should come interview, our PR agency." It was a tech PR agency. And Mark and I mean, we were really inseparable for years. And then Mark was, one of the heroes of Flight 93, 9/11. And I've been very fortunate that professors let me come in and talk about him because this is what time does, right? We all recede into the recesses of time. Just people forget. And I think it's important where we can to remind people about, these wonderful people. Your viewers, most of them I'm sure know Mark, but he was on Flight 93 that was intended to hit the Capitol. He and a group of other people rushed the cockpit, overtook it, fought with the hijackers. It crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And Mark was just a wonderful person. He really was. He had his flaws like we all do, but he was just a fantastic guy. And I really feel blessed to have, known him and been a friend. And it is one of these things, Reza and Ahmed, that I don't know what happened in life that just allowed me to meet so many people, right, that are far more impactful than I've been. Somehow I've got to meet all these folks and become friends with them. And I do think it goes back to that day in 1990 where I just decided I'm going to step down, go down 30 rows and take the microphone. And then this is what I tell people all the time. You got to grab that brass ring. You've got to seize that opportunity, because you never know where it's going to lead. Thank you for asking about him, because he was just a terrific person. Mark Bingham. All your listeners, if you haven't heard Mark Bingham, go look him up. He was just a terrific guy.
Well, I'll say, as a member on the board of directors for the Alumni Association, we have the Mark Bingham Award there, and the Achievement Award. So I chaired that committee, co-chaired that committee with the Berkeley Foundation. And, there's all kinds of things you can do from the experiences that we three have had and the numerous Cal Berkeley alum and students that are out there that have done and will do great things that make this world turn 100%. One thing that, I have to just say, I take my hat off to you, sir, is there two things. One is your philanthropy and your involvement, because as in this world that I'm in, it's about time, talent, and treasure. And any one of those can be just as valuable equally. And so your philanthropy and involvement with water polo, but also your kidney donation. And if you could sort of speak to that and give some background, I'd really appreciate it, because that is the essence, again, of what Bear Territory is all about.
Well, in 2023, I did what's called a non-directed kidney donation, which means you don't know the person who's getting the kidney. You're just doing it to help save someone's life. It didn't start out that way. I'm going to do a very quick backstory. About 6 years ago, a friend of mine, not a great friend, but a friend, I had seen a social post where he was in the hospital and somebody had set up a GoFundMe account for him. And for whatever reason, and these things are so weird, that GoFundMe account hadn't taken off. And it wasn't to me, what got me wasn't the fact that there wasn't a lot of money in there. It's that there wasn't a lot of interest. And I thought, this poor guy's in the hospital, and I wonder what it feels like to think, I think wrongly, but to think that nobody cares, right? Because you've got this GoFundMe account that's kind of stalled out. So I put a little money in there, and within probably 15 minutes, I got an email from him thanking me for caring, right? The money was secondary. What mattered was that somebody actually cared about him. He ended up passing away not long after that. And I thought to myself, if I've got a chance to live my values and do something, I'm going to do that. So 3 years ago, a friend and former colleague of mine from Persistent Systems, a wonderful company that I worked for 7 years, I saw a post that he needed a kidney. And he was pretty in dire need of it. And I thought, well, Ken, here's your opportunity to live your values. And so I contacted him and said, I'll go through the process. The process of donating a kidney is exhaustive. You have to be a match. If you're a family member, there's a good likelihood you'll be a match. If it's not a family member, it's iffy. So we weren't a match. So what you do is you volunteer to donate your kidney. That kidney goes to a match. The person who's getting your kidney also has somebody who's volunteered to get a kidney, to give a kidney. That kidney then goes to the person who you intended your kidney to go to. So I go through all these tests. And we're about to do it. And as it turns out, my friend ended up getting a kidney from a decedent. And with all due respect to the person who passed away, it was great news for him. And at that point, 99.9999999% of people would drop out. And I said, I'm going to go ahead and go through with this. And what I'm going to tell you is absolutely not meant to be a pat on the back or anything like that. In fact, it was very, very hard for me to talk about this for months after I donated my kidney, because I didn't want to make it sound like I was looking for kudos or anything like that. That part was hard, right? As you can tell, I like to talk. I like to share stories, and I couldn't talk about that just for myself. Non-directed kidney donations. There are 340 million Americans. Of those 340 million Americans, the number of people who do a non-directed kidney donation, which means you don't know who's getting it, last year was about 320. So I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. If you decide to give a kidney, so if anyone out there decides they can give a kidney non-directed, you're doing a 1 in a million thing. I didn't know who got it. You each sign a release form if you want to, right? That says that you can be contacted. So I signed the release form. It turns out they did too. And so they contacted me early in 24. And about a month ago in December, right before Christmas, I was down in Arizona at the Mayo Clinic getting my checkup. and they heard I was going to be down there and they wanted to meet. So they had me over to their home for dinner. And it was singularly the most profound, soul enriching experience I've ever had to meet the person that, is still living, because they opened up my body, took something out and gave it to them, to meet his family, and he had a whole bunch of people over. We come from two completely different backgrounds, right? Which I think is beautiful. And there's that, and I tell people, it's a wonderful life moment. It was honestly, it was absolutely beautiful, and something that I'll always have. And it's really impacted me. Like it's impacted, to know that, I live my values on this. And, so I really thank you for asking about that. More importantly, I would just encourage people. I know, and then, one of the reasons I talk about this stuff, and there's some other philanthropic stuff I talk about, and I mean this sincerely. There is nothing special about Ken Montgomery that allows me to do this. There's nothing molecularly special. There's nothing physically special about me, right? So if Ken Montgomery can do this, anyone can. And whatever that is that you can do it. And that's why I like to talk about it, because I want people to know that when you see the impact that you could make by doing something like this, it's really remarkable. So thank you for asking about that.
Brother, you walk humbly. We know that, baby. And that's real. And it is demonstrated in everything, not only what you say as a mic man, but as who you are as a person and who you are as a golden bear.
I think, you could very well be the spokesman. I mean, you are such a good, inspirational person, and you speak with so much emotion and heartfelt feelings about what you've done, that, I mean, I think you could inspire a lot more people to do what you've done there. And by the way, the other thing you've done is you've given very generously to the Cal Athletic Department in supporting many different sports programs, but perhaps most notably, a $2.7 million gift to men's water polo. That's pretty amazing. By the way.
Kirk and I have been friends. I was just talking to Kirk a couple of days ago. Kirk and I have been friends for 30 something years. And, I didn't play water polo. But when I was at Cal, many of my best friends, were on the water polo team, and they embraced me, and they're wonderful people. And my longest best friend, Jeff Kasserek, his mom was an absolutely beautiful lady. And she would always encourage me to go back and get my degree. And she would just encourage me. She goes, "Ken, you're going to feel better about yourself, right? But there's nothing wrong with you that you didn't get your degree, but you're going to finish this and you're going to feel good about yourself." And she passed away in 2014. So I had been thinking about going back to Cal. I left Cal in 92, left in good standing, but just had got burnt out, and started working, made a nice little career for myself. And I was at a baseball game at Sunken Diamond with my development officer, Brian Rainey, who I know both of you know Brian, a wonderful person who's now working for the Special Olympics. And Brian, and I never lied about not graduating. So Brian, we're at this baseball game. I had started donating to Cal for various things. And he said, "Hey, Ken, where'd you graduate from?" And it was the first time somebody at Cal had said that to me, right? And I go, "Brian, I never graduated. Why do you ask?" And it really it almost took my breath away, because I just wasn't prepared for it. So we started talking. He goes, "Well, would you be interested in going back and getting your degree?" And I have been thinking about it. This was in June of 16. And so he introduced me to some folks. And at first I was really worried. I thought, I'm going to have to reapply or whatnot. And it was the easiest thing, because I left in good standing. It's amazing that you're not reapplying, you're just re-enrolling. And so I'm talking with this wonderful woman, Bridget Lair, who's just absolutely wonderful. She goes, "Well, we're going to have to do some research, because we're going to have to find out your student ID number." And I'm not kidding you. I said 10685373. And where did that come from? 10685373. I haven't used that number in 30, whatever. And it was my student. She plugged it in. Boom, all my stuff came up. And they had when I got into Cal, I had to really plead and beg my way to get into Cal. And so I had to go through an interview to get in, and it was in the bowels of Sprout. And there was this wonderful woman, Mrs. Johnson, and she's interviewing me, and I'm hoping and I wrote this beautiful letter. I quoted some things from different songs like California, Here's to Thee, and stand for right, let there be light type of stuff. And this is how I'm going to live if you let me into Cal. But I didn't know if I was going to get in. And I remember her saying, like, you're not going to make me regret this, as she's signing, literally, I got to see like signing my acceptance form, right? And she came up to me a couple of years later when I was the mic man, and she gave me a big hug, and she goes, I'm so glad, I bring that up because when I got back into Cal, Bridget had my original file, and in there was that signature from here. And, this stuff is ancient. It looked like the Magna Carta, in the year of our Lord, 1980, whatever. Right. And, I got back into Cal, I was global head of, brand and engagement with, a huge technology company headquartered in India called Persistent Systems. They didn't just allow me to do that. Anand Deshpande, who's the CEO of the company, he's now the chairman. He didn't allow me. He encouraged me. He wanted me to go back and get my degree and to share that with all of the employees. And I would do that. And that was what really inspired me to do this, commitment and gift to Cal men's water polo in honor of Donna Kasrick, in honor of Kirk Everest. And what happened was, I started back at Cal in the fall of 16, and, Kirk just really made me a part of the program. I had all these running jokes, and they were jokes, but they were true. And I leaned into it, and I had all these friends, that were 18, 19, 20 years old, 21. And I said, why we get along so well? I might be twice your age, but I have half your maturity. And just like it was 30 years earlier, my best friends were guys on the water polo team, and they still are. And they mean the world to me. This is what's so beautiful about college, to have that experience when I was in my teens and 20s, and then be able to get to have my experience in my 50s. Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm the blessed guy. It's just it's why I walk around smiling all the time. It just doesn't get better. And so that's what inspired that. And, I really thought about it. I thought, how can I make a difference? How can I honor Donna? How can I honor Kirk? And, I didn't want my name on anything. It's a legacy gift. I insisted that it was the Donna Kasrick Excellence Fund for water polo. It's the Kirk Everest Director of Men's Water Polo. There've been some very, very nice articles and stuff about it that I agreed to, only to show people that if I can do it, you can do it in whatever way you can do it. Right. And I mean that. So, I think there's lots of wonderful stuff at Cal. I think the three programs that really do just exemplify and personify what it is about Cal athletics would be rugby, water polo, and crew. And there's zero disrespect to any of the other programs because I've supported the other programs, right? But those three to me are just, to me, are special. And I get very aggravated with people who want to cut the Olympic sports. I understand some of it, right? And whatnot. But I've made lifelong friends, through those sports. These are wonderful people. The very interesting thing is, particularly with water polo, a lot of people think it's a country club sport. And while there are certainly kids that come from affluent backgrounds, Cal has a lot of international players on the team that are absolutely not from affluent backgrounds. And so getting to, helping to support that, has been really, it's just been very meaningful to me.
Well, I'll say this, and then I'm going to kick it to Rez. Played football. I was a walk-on, et cetera, et cetera. But the motivation and inspiration came from some of the guys that I didn't play football with. It was those guys who wanted to play football, but went on to play rugby. It was guys like Armacanian, who was on the crew team, who went on to do great things with the A's, in his world. It was Coach Pete Keno, who was a giant to me as this 5'9.5", 175-pound corner DB, who just got tickled to death out of me watching me play and watching me practice. When we used to have everything was in Harmon then, right? And he used to laugh, and he says, Ahmad, you're just amazing. He used to laugh and tell me, Now, the next step for you is for you to come out for the water polo team. I was like, I swim, I can. 5'9.5", I cannot. But he used to laugh. Pete was one of my favorite coaches and motivators of all time. He said, for you to be out there doing what you're doing is such an inspiration. So those teams, those are some of the bedrocks. That's some of the foundation teams because they don't get all the glory, not in the way that you get the hype of football. And you could be 0-11 and get the hype of the world for football. You could be national champions in all three of those sports, global champions, and be in the Olympics in all three of those sports. And people say, who's that guy? What team is that? And let me tell you right now, all those folks come from Bear territory. So I'm generally asked the question at this time, if you think about it, whether you're in school, whether it was out of school, or some moment in your life, what was your Bear territory moment?
So I have to tell you, I think my life, and I really mean that, has been my Bear territory moment, and I really mean that. Okay, like I never ever take for granted the people that I've got to meet that that have impacted me and influenced me, that I've had fun with. I mean, to this day, I could be anywhere and people will hear my voice. They'll see me and it's like, oh my God, you were the mic man. And so I will tell you my Bear territory moment with that in mind is knowing, because people have told me this, that I made a difference. And like Reza, you brought this up, knowing that I made a difference to people's time while they were at Cal, that's, man, if you go to a school like Cal, the world's most prestigious university, and you can make an impact where I have a absolute motto, and it's like, I want my definition of success is when I leave this world, I want the world to be a better place for me having been here. Okay. And we should all live. I think we should all live by that. And I can honestly look back on my time at Cal, and I know that I left Cal a better place for having been there. And I ignited in people a passion and a spirit and memories, right? We get older and we have to rely on our memories, right? And, but the memories of people at the events, right? The cheers that we did, the passion, that we had, the friends that they made. It's just amazing to me. And so I guess that's probably my Bear territory moment, is really knowing, just realizing that, I did leave that place a better place for having been there. I made a difference. I made an impact, and anyone can do that.
I got to tell you, when I first talked about the idea for this podcast with some close friends, I had one friend who, her very first text to me after I mentioned it was, oh my God, can you get Ken Montgomery on the show? Because the impact that he had on all of our lives during that era of Cal, and how you made just lifelong friends and people who care so much about this university. And you were that person who really connected and engaged all of us in a way to give a damn about the university and to care as much as we do. And we have you to thank for that. And just want to thank you so much for making the time today. I think the world of you. You are a good person through and through with everything that you do, and you live that life. And hey, by the way, anytime you want to come back on the show for any reason, you are absolutely more than welcome. I'll just close by saying this. You've been an inspiration to so many of us Cal fans. And I think you've heard me say this before, but I feel strongly that you're the personification and living embodiment of what we call Bear territory and the California spirit. And this isn't a knock on your age by any means, but you look damned good for a man born in 1868.
So thanks to both of you. I appreciate you. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say go Bears.
Go Bears.
Go Bears.
Those were some great stories. Thank you again to Ken for being on the show. That's going to do it for this week's episode. I say it every week, but we really do appreciate all of you out there listening and watching. Next week, we're super excited to bring you another great guest. We will be interviewing legendary Cal quarterback Mike Pawlowski, who just recently released his book, Everyday Great, the playbook for winning at everything. We'll hear stories about Mike's time playing football at Cal and in the pros, and learn more about his approach to facing obstacles head on, mastering your mindset, and building habits that lead to success in any area of your life. We also plan to introduce a new regularly occurring segment to shine a spotlight on a notable event in the storied history of our beloved university. Remember to save the date on Wednesday, January 15th. That's the day we'll have our first in-person get-together at 4 p.m. at Raleigh's. We look forward to seeing you there. And finally, I'd like to remind everyone about ACTS ALS. In a previous episode, Eddie Kleinhans told all of us the importance of supporting that foundation to find a cure for ALS. You can learn more about it all by visiting actsals.org. That's AXEALS.org. If you're able, please consider making a donation or buying some merchandise. See you next week. As Doctor Who famously says, we're all stories. In the end, make it a good one. What stories do you want to share? We want you to tell the whole damn world about. Go Bears.
Okay, so get up. All right, brother. I'm going to go in 3. I want you guys to start. I'm going to do the answer, okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3. You know it. 1, you tell us